All right, so welcome back to QuickBooks Chapter 4. This is where we last left off, right? We talked about what job costing is and what it does. But again, we'll see this more in depth and more for when you sell a product to a customer, because that's what job costing is. It's where you're going to be assigning customers to particular jobs. So this is chapter 4. So it's not necessarily very prevalent here, but it is definitely part of it. But we do actually see job costing more in action when we dive into chapter 9, where we look at time and billing. Okay, so that won't be for a while. However, this is where we last left off. So now we're going to be introducing on how we pay a vendor, right? We looked at what a vendor does, right? They provide us goods, services, and so on and so forth, right? So they're the ones that we are either using as a supplier, maybe they're doing a job for us, maybe they're doing some construction. So how do we pay these vendors? Okay, so that's where we're going to look right here, is that you're going to have two types of vendors, right? You're going to have your cash vendors and you're going to have your credit vendors. Cash vendors are pretty straightforward, right? You pay them when you have cash, right? Your credit vendors are the vendors that give you accounts that you can owe on, and they send you bills, and your job is to be responsible enough to be able to pay those vendors back in a mannerly time, right? So that's the huge difference here between a cash and a credit vendor. Is one of them you pay at time of service, the other one you pay later, you owe them on an account, and then you are obligated to pay them later. Okay, so again, there are multiple ways that you can enter in or not enter in, but pay a vendor, right? You could pay them by recording directly into the register. You can record writing a check by using the write a checks function, or you can even do it by entering like a credit card payment, right? You could pay your vendors with a credit card, all right? Or third option is you receive a bill from them and you pay them later, okay? So that's the main focus that we're going to be looking at today. Now, if you remember, so when I open up my QuickBooks, right, usually this is what will happen. You'll get the alert box right away saying enter in the password, so then you can continue on what you're working for. I already canceled that already, so now I'm at this home page. I do not need to have to create or open up the portable file anymore, because right now it's already been open. We already used it. We're using it as a current working data file. So right here, just like how normal, for example, like Microsoft Word, right? If you want to go look at a previous document, you can go to the file and open up the last document that you just were working on. This is the same idea here, where you don't have to dig through where you put that file. You don't have to do anything. You can just come over here and see what we last worked on. So it says, even here it gives you to the time and date too. So we did work on customizing. Okay, but the one that we're looking for is going to be expenses, because that's the one that we just did yesterday, right? It even tells you that we did it yesterday, May 4th at this time. So that's the one that we want to do, and all you have to do is just double click on it, and they may ask you to enter in a password. Sometimes the password will be saved in there, but in this case, it's going to ask you for the password, right? Which we all know it's going to be Questiva, so Questiva 21, right? It's always going to be at the very front of the chapter's page. For every file that you open, it will give you the password right there. Okay, and we click OK. So in this case, we already updated the file. We already did everything that we needed to. So all it's doing is we're going to be continuing on from where we left off. And that's exactly what this is meant for. It's meant so that you can continuously keep working on your books at any given time. Okay, so you may have to close a few windows like this one. No, I don't need an offer for the 22 version. Okay, and if you remember, right, when we did our we enter in our vendor. So I go into the vendor center. We entered in Boswell Consulting, and here they are. Okay, so it saved the work automatically without me having to, manually do file save or, control S on the keyboard to save it. It saved it automatically, okay? Now, if you're in the middle of a transaction, it will not save it, okay? So I'm going to show you this little feature where when you have the sounds on, every time you enter in a transaction, you click on that button where it says OK or where it says save and close. That's going to save it on the drive, and that's where you can move on to the next transaction, okay? And you're going to get that beep of approval, okay? So there you go. We entered in Boswell Consulting, and we're done with that. Now, let's talk about how we can enter in our transactions to pay our vendors. So we've already explored the options, right? We said the first couple of options that we had was to use the registers directly, okay? So if you remember from on chapter 1, I briefly mentioned over what a register does. It's where you enter in a transaction, you enter in the amount, and it's going to automatically update an account for you to let you know how much you have in a specific account. So in this case, when we're going to pay a vendor, we're typically going to be using our checking account or whatever account that has cash on hand account, something that has something like that, right? So that's one of the things that we're going to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, there are 2 ways you're able to get to a register. On your home page, right, you have the check register right here, okay? You can go ahead and click on that, and you're going to get this window here because you need to make sure that you are toggling the correct account. So in this case, the first thing that's highlighted is your checking account. You can dip into your savings, you can dip into journal entries, or even your money markets. But in this case, we want to strictly stay in our checking account, okay? And when you click OK, your checking register will pop up. Okay, never mind. There's another way too. So this one, right? This is your checking register. This is how much money you have in the bank. So right now I have $11,564 in my bank. All right, and we call this a register. You can enter in your transactions right here. Now, let me go ahead and show you the other 2 ways that you can also be able to get into that register. You can also go up to your menu, right? And you could go to banking, okay? And when you go to here, you have use registers. So when you click on this one is actually going to give you a longer list than just your bank account, okay? This is going to allow you to be able to access any registers and all registers. So if you remember in chapter 12, I mentioned to you what a register is. A register is basically any asset, any liability, or any equity account that has a running balance, okay? And it's only those 3 accounts, which we call them our permanent accounts, because if you really think about it, can you close out a checking account? No, because if you close out your bank account, what does that tell us? It means you must have stopped doing business. Can you close out a loan? You can, right? You can file for bankruptcy and close out the loan, but at the end of the day, that loan shark is still going to come after you. So that's the idea here, is that these are registers. They give you account balances at the end of every transaction. They're always going to stay open. So that's why if you use the banking menu and you go to use registers, you're going to be able to see every single account that is an asset, liability, and equity that you can open up a register for. Okay? So that's the second way. I'm going to click cancel. The third way you're able to do that is you can simply go to your chart of accounts. Okay? So I just clicked on the chart of accounts on my home page because it's just right there. Right? And notice this, right? We've mentioned this before in chapter 12. All my assets, all my liabilities, and all my equity accounts, as you can see on this very last right column, they all have balances. where your income and your expenses, they close at the end of the accounting period, so they don't have account balances. Okay? So that means they don't have registers, only your liabilities, equity, and your assets. So in this case, I can also enter in my register by double clicking on the account that I'm looking at. So if I want to go on my checking account, all I got to do is double click it and it will pop up my checking register. So those are 3 ways that you can enter your checking register. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at our very first entry that we're going to be doing using the register. Now, you normally would be using the register if you have 3 things, right? If you're planning to use cash, a debit card, or an electronic funds transfers, okay? Because all 3 of those do not require you to have to write a check, right? So I said cash, debit card, EFT. Oh, and if you write a manual physical check. So again, as a business, right, we carry around a checkbook for a reason. So then when you make your purchases, you make your transactions and you're on the go, you just cut them a check manually and then you just give it to them. Well, QuickBooks also has the measures of allowing us to print our checks at our office so we can mail them out as well. Okay, we'll talk about that in a few. But this section here, when you're using the register, it's meant for those 4 transactions, right? If you're using money like cash, you can use the register. If you're using a debit card, right, you can also use this as well. And then if you're using a manual check, you can write that there too, and an EFT, so an electronic funds transfer, where you're transferring from your checking account to someone else's checking account. So those are the 4 things that you would utilize to be able to put it into the register, okay? And so first thing you got to do is you got to put in the date, okay? So like I mentioned before, you can retroactively enter in any transaction from the past. Okay, now sometimes you might get an error message saying, hey, you are entering something that's way past the accounting period. You can always choose ignore. Okay, but in this case, right, we're following the book and this is what the book says, and I'm going to use 2021's dates, or in this case, I can use 2022 dates, right, just to make it a little more up to date today. So let's take a look. All right. So we're going to be entering in a transaction for the first time. So we're going to be using the check register. We're going to enter in the date to be, let's see, we're going to be using February 8th. So let's do this year, just so then we're in the same time frame. So right now it will populate the date that you are currently on, which is today, right? This will always update to the latest day that you are using QuickBooks. So in this case, it is not May right now. Right now it's May, but we're going to be entering a transaction that happened in February. Here's the rule of thumb. You can type in the dates, but that's not best recommended. They always recommend you to use this little calendar and to select that date. But if you're using like a date that's way in the past or way in the future, you can type it in and then click on that little calendar and lock it in. So that's the huge thing there. You never want to type everything in. You want to make sure that you go ahead and utilize this calendar to select the date. So in this case, February 5th. All right, there you go. Perfect. February 5th. Now, this number right here where it says number in gray, this is where you can enter in. If it's cash, right? You don't enter anything in here. If you wrote a check, right, a manual check, you use the manual check number that's listed on the check that you issued, right? Because the bank will give you check numbers that are already printed. So you want to make sure that you match it in your books if you're writing an actual manual check. You can also put debit card, right? Debit, for in case you use a debit card to pay for something, right? Or you can use EFT because maybe you transferred money. So that's this section right here. At the very top here is where you're going to be entering how you paid. Okay? So in this case, right, we wrote a manual check. Okay. I believe we did write a manual check. It's going to be check number 331. Okay. All right. And then now the second thing that you got to fill in is who did you make a payment to? So in this case, we are going to be putting in Bay Office Supplies. Now here's what's the cool thing. I type in BAY, nothing. Okay. But look at this list right here where it populates. So let's say if I have someone that I know that's in here, let's say ACE, what you're seeing here is it's auto-filling for you. And that's the purpose of having QuickBooks. The more information you fill in here, it's going to populate and search things for you so you don't have to enter it all the way in. So in this case, right, ACE Supply already exists in my book. So I can select them, and that means then it's going to create the transaction for this particular vendor. But again, I wanted to do for Bay. So B, so notice I put B, we got Barry, Ron Barry, which is a customer, so we can't use that one. But it lists everybody else, everybody in QuickBooks. So whether they're an employee, customer, or a vendor, it will populate anybody until you find the person that you want. But in this case, Bay Office Supply is someone I don't actually have. Okay, so if I don't have it, right, and let's say I go ahead and click tab, so tab's your best friend to move across the cells. If you press enter, you might accidentally enter in the transaction and lock it in. All right, so your tab is your best friend. So if you press that tab button, you're going to get a pop-up window saying this person doesn't exist in QuickBooks. You have three options. You can either quick add them, you can either set them up, or you can cancel. Maybe you misspelled something. Okay? So in this case, my book tells me I need to quick add them because maybe you drove down the street and you're like, "Oh, I need to buy some paper." And you just go to whatever random supply store you can get to. So maybe I went to a Staples, maybe I went to an Office Depot. And I don't have them in my books because I don't go to them. They're not my go-to vendor. I just happen to swing by the store, and if I did, then I can just quickly add them. So like I mentioned before, if you ever have those occasions, you never need to fill out any other information because they're just a one-time deal. Okay? Same thing right here. Bay Office Supplies, they're a one-time deal. So I'm going to go ahead and quick add them. Okay? When I quick add them, it's going to give me what kind of person are they? Are they a vendor, customer, employee, or other? In this case, they are a vendor because I'm buying supplies from them. They're an office supply store. So I'm going to go ahead and select vendor, and I'm going to click OK. So what that happens is now, when I'm done with this transaction, this Bay Office Supply is actually going to appear on my vendor list. But there's no information on it because it's just a random store that I am purchasing stuff from. Now in this case, they ask me, okay, what accounts am I utilizing because I decided to buy office supplies, right? Straightforward. If I bought office supplies, then I bought office supplies. So I'm going to be using my office supplies expense account. Okay, so in this case, there you go. I'm going to select office supplies. So again, where did all these accounts come from? They derived from your chart of accounts. So here is the list of every single account. So again, this is why QuickBooks makes it that much quicker to add in transactions because as you keep building your profiles, right, you're making it that much easier for you to just enter your transactions and move on, right? Instead of having to type out everything one at a time, this is how it helps you save time. So right here, I have an office supplies account. So I typed in just the first three letters and it already populated that I'm looking for office supplies. So I selected office supplies. Okay. Now, what's my note going to say? Whatever you want to say. Maybe I bought some printer paper. I bought some this. Whatever you feel that you want to put a description in. So this memo right here is basically just going to keep you a track record of what you bought. It's just a memo for you. Okay, so in this case, I can say I bought office supplies. Okay, so purchase office supplies. Okay, maybe I bought some printer paper, maybe I bought some stuff, right? In this case, that's good enough for me. That's the general information that I need to know is I purchase office supplies. Okay? You can go into more details and more specifics if you need to. Again, the memo is whatever you want to put in there. So how much was the amount? The total amount was a total of $128.60. So here is the same idea of a debit and credit system, except the funny thing about this is QuickBooks actually reverts it. So instead of having your debits on the left and your credits on the right, it's credits on the right, it's credits on the left, debits on the right. So if I'm going to be using the first column, that's me spending my money. That's my credit here. And then the middle section is going to be my debit, which is going to be if I need to add money. And then my last column here is my account balance. So right now, I have a total of 11,000. So if I type in here that I spent $128.60, right? And I go ahead and press enter, that means I'm going to submit my transaction. I get that beep of approval. That means I saved that transaction. So that means it's in my books already. And look at this. It changed my total amount from 11,564. Now it's down to 11,435. So again, in this case, they kind of confuse you here because now the credits, it come first and your debits come last. So in this case, I'm spending the money first and then the middle part is adding my money. And then my account balance is last. Okay? So there you go. I entered in my transaction for $128.60. And this is me if I'm very lazy or if I'm just, I just want to do a quick math or want to just get my total balance immediately. This is the quickest way you can enter in a transaction. Is it the most correct? It is correct. You're not doing anything wrong here. Is it? It is a way. So it's not wrong. You're not doing anything wrong here. It's just a quick and lazy way to enter something in quickly in a register so you can get your ending balance a lot quicker, okay? So from my experience, I use registers a lot more than actually using the forms because this is so much more easier, right? You just add in what you need to add, subtract, and things like that, right? You just type it in and it will do the accounting behind the scenes. So right now, it just tapped into my checking account saying that I just spent money, but it also tapped into my office supplies expense account saying I made an expense. So that's the key thing that you need to know, that QuickBooks is we entered it in one side, right? We're saying we bought office supplies, right? But we're not physically adding our debits and credits. Okay? So that's where you have to know that that QuickBooks does the accounting behind the scenes. Right? You're not the one that's going to be debiting and crediting it yourself. It's going to just do it for you automatically. All you have to understand is where are you going to put your money? Are you going to put it in the credit column or the debit column? Did you spend the money or did you earn the money and you deposited the money? Okay? So there you go, and that is how you use a register. All right, any questions here? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next section where it says, well, what if I actually, for this Bay office supply, when I bought office supplies, I actually made purchases for both of my store location. And I want to separate my costs so then I know how much money I spent for my San Jose location and I know how much money I spent for my Walnut Creek location. You can split a cost for one vendor. Yes. How do I do that? I just need to make sure that I select this transaction and I can choose to either split it. Okay. If you click on split, it will just take you to the actual check itself. But what I normally like to do is I want to physically see it. So I don't want to do it here. So I want to actually double click on it and that it's going to populate a write checks window. Exactly, and it looks just like this. So this is how I like to actually enter in my transaction. It's a lot more easier to be able to fix it. And here's the cool thing. You can edit your transactions at any given time. You're not obligated to have to wait till the end, or you're not obligated to have to make the changes later on. But with this though, you have to, if you are using QuickBooks and you are not the admin and you are, someone else who's just entering in the data for you, you may or may not have permission to edit your transactions, okay? So if you remember in chapter 12, I taught you how to make those parameters for setting up a user for specific people, right? You can block them off from making changes to any transactions, or you can give them full access to let them do whatever they want to do. If they make a mistake, they don't have to come to you as the accountant to fix the problem for them. They can do it on their own. So in this case, so that's why we can go ahead and edit a transaction at any given time. Maybe I put the date in wrong. Maybe I put the wrong check number in. I can make changes for the transaction at any given time. So here, right, I have my one account for the office supplies, okay? And let's say when I went to that store, I also end up buying internet cables for, I also bought internet cables. So I can actually go ahead and see I have interest expense, I have computer and internet expense. So that's what I want because I bought internet cables. Now let's see. The first one that I bought was office supplies. I ended up buying printer paper, okay? So I'm going to type in here printer paper, okay? And I end up buying internet cables, okay? So I could just type that in there. Now, I need to now designate how much money is going to go to where. So let's take a look here. So I'm going to designate that I split the cost. I paid $100 to the printer paper and paid the remaining $28.60 to buy internet cables. So I can go ahead and fix this to say I purchased $100 here, and therefore I have $28.60 remaining. Now here's the rule of thumb. It must match for whatever amount that you entered in here first. If it does not match, you will not be able to enter in this data. So make sure, a huge factor is that if you try to enter it in and they don't match, you're gonna get an error message saying that you can't do this, okay? Now, what if I accidentally put that in and I said, oh, I forgot to include the internet cables? Then you need to change the amount here first, and then you're able to enter it in for whatever amount that you have in your accounts. Okay, so that's the rule of thumb. There is you can't, if right now I said I spent $128.60, that means your numbers must match down here to equal $128.60. So here it's another safeguard so that when you make those typos, right, it will prevent you from making those mistakes and making your accounting more accurately by fixing those mistakes or giving you message boxes saying, hey, your numbers don't match, okay? So as I remember, okay, as you remember, I'm going to go ahead and go across over here, okay? So this is the customer jobs section. This is where if I need to assign it to a specific person, did I buy printer paper for a particular customer for the particular store, then that's where this section you're going to fill in. But the main focus here is the class. So because I have class tracking turned on, this is the column you're going to utilize to make your separation. So as I mentioned before, right, the classes that we have here is going to be based on store location. So I have a San Jose location and I have Walnut Creek. And then what is overhead? Overhead is basically the middle ground between the two. So for example, if I'm paying somebody that works for my company, I don't associate them working for the San Jose location. I associate them working for the overall company, which is going to be considered an overhead expense. Okay, they work for both of the company, not just one particular company. So those are your three classes that you have. So in this case, let's say I bought that printer paper for the San Jose location, then I go ahead and type in San Jose, or I can just go ahead and click that drop down menu to get it. And then I bought the cables for the Walnut Creek, so I can type in WA, and it says right here, you already have that. So you may or may not. So as you can see, the cool thing about this too is you're able to add a location at any given time. Just like how we just added that vendor, right? We added it as we went. Instead of having to say, stop, wait, I don't have this vendor. I need to enter them in first and then I can fill in the transaction. No, that's the beauty about QuickBooks is you can keep adding and adding and adding on the go if you'd like. But the dangers of that is that what if you have an account that already exists, but when you typed it in, you didn't type it in correctly, or what you were thinking described that account, and that's why it didn't populate in your list, it didn't show up, then that's where you're gonna may have a possibility of adding too many accounts under in a list, or maybe you have a particular customer that you already have, but they go by a different name, but it's not registered in the in QuickBooks. So that's the room of error right there, is that you could potentially be adding a lot of accounts that clutter your chart of accounts because you already have an existing account that says something like that. Okay, so same thing here, but you can add as you go. So in this case, we got Walnut Creek there. And once I've done that and everything looks good, they all match, and I bought $100 worth of printer paper for San Jose and $28.60 worth of internet cables for Walnut Creek, I can go ahead and click this button where it says Save and Close. Now here, what's the difference between Save and Close and Save and New? Save and Close basically saves this transaction and closes this window. Save and New is going to save this transaction and open up a brand new write a checks window. Okay, and I don't want to do that. I just want to save it and close it. Okay, then you're going to get this error message saying you made changes to this transaction. Are you sure you want to save it? You say yes. You can get that beep of approval once again. So then now when you see it on your register, it's now considered split because you use this one vendor and you split the cost based into two different accounts for two different locations. Okay? But at the end of the day, when you look at this, it's still for the overall amount of $128.60. Okay? So that's how you can utilize the register. Any questions? Okay. So let me go back to this real quick so I can say this real quick. So let's say I use an EFT or I use a debit card to do the transaction. So right here where it says number, that's where I made that insert, right? I insert that 331 on my register. This is also the place too. If I want to say this was a debit card transaction, right? If I type in debit and I save this, right? When I go to my my register, it will show me that this is a debit card transaction. Okay? So that's how I use it. All right, let me go back and fix that and see that. So you can change it right there, right then and there if you really wanted to. Okay? So any questions in regards to using registers? No? Okay. Moving on to the next section. Okay? We're going to talk about how to use the write a checks function. So in QuickBooks, like I've mentioned before, if you don't like carrying a checkbook around, then the easiest way to be able to do things is by using the write a checks function. Okay? So the write a checks function, what is that? Well, let's look at my banking account, right? Here you go. I have the write a checks function right here. So what this actually does is it allows you to actually write a check, and you're able to print it out, and you're able to send those checks out to whoever that you owe money to. Now, here's a few rules and regulations is you cannot print out a check on a blank piece of paper. It doesn't work that way. You do need to buy special treasury paper, treasury stock paper that is a legitimate form of currency. So if you ever seen that shiny paper, right, you can tell by either the gray the gray dots that's all over the back of it, or they have this like holographic seal on it. That's proof that it's from a real Treasury Institute that allows you to be able to spend money. It's a legitimate form of Treasury money that's accepted by the bank. Because if you decide, if anybody can just print on a regular piece of paper, we all be rich right now, right? We all be writing checks left and right when we don't even have, real money, right? So that's why that's one of the preventative measures of that as well. But it's also because, if you can get a bank book or if you can get a checkbook from the bank, right, you can also get treasury stocks. And there are some rules and regulations, again, because you might also need to get special ink to be able to print on that special paper, right? Because if you do a regular inkjet, it might not work, or you definitely don't want to accidentally spill water on it, and then all the numbers gets all messed up. So I believe it's also like you may need to buy a special ink to be able to print on those treasury stock paper. Now, again, you can order them directly from QuickBooks or Intuit, right? And they can mail you out these already. Basically, they're like templates. All you gotta do is you just gotta put that paper into the printer, and they will print it for you. But I know that you can be able to get that from any bank institution. So any like Chase, Wells Fargo, they'll be able to provide you that. Okay, so that's the rule of thumb of how you can use the write a checks window. But also, if you do use this, you do have to enter in your bank account, of course. So when I just clicked on it, it gave me that same exact form that I was just filling out earlier, right? And that's what I'm trying to say, is that you're just only filling this out. This doesn't look anything like a check, but when you print it out, it will look like a check. Okay? And we'll talk about how to print checks later on. But that's a way that you can use is by going on the home page and clicking on write a checks. Okay? We call this the write a checks window. Okay? Now that's just only one way that you can be able to get to the write a checks window. There are 2 ways that you can go to the write a checks window, maybe even more. But the more common ones that you want to make sure that you know is for sure the home page. And of course, if you go on the home page, right, it's got to exist also on your banking menu. Okay, so if you go to banking, okay, and you'd be able to write a check is the first one. Okay, other hidden ones that you could also find as well is if you were in your chart of accounts, you can, I believe the only one that you can do is if you right click checking, you'd be able to write a check this way as well. Okay, but that's only for checking, right? You can't write a check out from your from any other account. You can't, for example, land. Can you write a check out from land? No, it's only just specifically this checking account. Okay, so those are ways that you can do it, but the most common one that you would see is just go straight away to your on your home page and click on write a checks. Okay, so the very first thing you got to make sure is which account are you writing a check out from. So again, yes, you can write a check out from your savings. It's not recommended, but you can. But in this case, your go-to is going to be your checking account. Okay. Next thing is, if you're going to be using a checking account, you have the option to either utilize an existing number that you want to use, okay? It can't be the one that you have a manual written check for, because that's the reason why you are saving those numbers, because those are for your manual check. They already are pre-printed. These numbers that we have here on the Write a Checks window, where we're actually physically printing them out ourselves, you can make up any number that you'd like, okay? So, again, you can make up any number, or you can, you know, you can make up any number, so it doesn't matter what number you use, okay? Just as long as it's not matching your manual checkbook number, okay? So in this case, I have two options. I can choose to assign the number now, or I can choose to assign the number later when I write a whole bunch of checks, right? Then I can just press print, and it will print out all the checks that I've written out in chronological, or in order, and it will assign a number to it then. All right, I could choose to do that. How do I choose that option? You could go to print later, okay? So print later means you're not going to assign the number now. So when I click that, it says to be printed. That means I can designate the number later on. So that's what I want to do here, and that's what they tell you to do, is to select that print later. Okay? But let's say if I choose not to, and let's say I want to assign the number now, I can still assign the number, but the problem is, here's what you have to also remember to do. Just because you write in a check number, that doesn't mean it's been produced. You still have to print it out at the end of the day. All right? So you can assign the number if you want to. If you don't, then you can choose to do it later. So another thing that we got to do is here, we're going to be working on the 8th of February now. So February 8th, okay? Is there a balanced number here? It's up to you. If you want to, you can type in a number here. If you could just leave this blank as well, because if you type in numbers here, it will automatically calculate it right up here. So it's optional if you want to fill it out now, but if you do fill this out first and you start entering all your numbers in here, then it's going to take this number and try to match it against this. So that's also one thing that you definitely want to avoid too, because it's going to tell you that you have too much money if you cap it. So you're better off putting all your accounts here and having all the numbers line up and get added, and it will automatically calculate this. Okay? So who's the vendor that I'm looking for? Well, we're looking at Ace Supply. Okay? So there we go. I type in Ace, and here they are, Ace Supply. Okay? When I type it in, look what happens. It fills in the address for me. It fills in other information that I already have with them. So that's the cool thing, and that's why I mentioned, right? The more you build your profiles, the much more easier and quicker things get filled in for you automatically. Okay, so there you go. We got Ace Supply, and we have let's see, we got we got Write a Checks. Oh, actually, no, we're not doing Ace Supply yet. We're doing Orlando Properties. So Orlando, so there you go. I type in Orlando, and here they are. And see, it just changed the address automatically. So you could type it in, and you could use tab to go through it. You could just use your mouse and click on it. So here you go. We're going to be writing a check to Orlando Properties on the 8th, right? And of course, with Orlando Properties, it already filled in to me that you must be referring to a rent expense, okay? Because that's what you're going to be using anyways, right? So remember, when we built the profile, you linked it to an account, right? So for instance, we already linked rent expense to Orlando Properties. So that means every time I use Orlando Properties, boom, it's automatically say that you're probably paying rent right now. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be paying rent for the San Jose location. We're going to be paying $3,200 for San Jose, and we're going to print the check later. So there you go. We can go ahead and type in rent is $3,500, and your memo is pay for rent for San Jose location. Okay? You then have the memo here. And the cool thing about this too is you're also able to use the shortcuts of control, to copy and paste and be able to paste things here. So for example, right here, I have a memo right here. It just says account 42, blah, 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 right? You can change this and say, and paste it in here. So I copied what I wrote here and I paste it right here. So I said paying for, this, but you can also use the account number too, right? That is pertinent information in regards to the transaction. So there you go. And I got to also say that this is for the San Jose location. So, right, everything looks good. So I typed it in here and look, it populated right here for me automatically. I don't need to fill it up here first and then enter the information here. It already grabbed that number for me. So once everything looks good, this is how we use the write a text function. It's very similar to what we did in the previous one, except that one is we use a manual check. This one, we have to save this because we're going to print it out later. Yes?
So my question is that the memo on the checkbook, check itself, has like account number, and then the memo on the where we are entering the information, we can write the link for San Jose locations, but they are not connected, right?
Yes. So in this case, this one right here, this memo right here is what you're going to be putting on the check, correct? The memo that's right here down below, this is for your notes. So one of them is going to appear on the actual check itself. This one, the one that's down below, is going to appear on my book, so I know why I paid rent. And I know exactly who I paid rent, and I know exactly what that rent was for.
So
Okay.
when I put the property name and the account number showed up because it's in the vendor's entry.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
So again, the more and then you can also put that as part of. It's one of those things that you could do as part of when you do your vendor profile. You can add as whatever information that you need to be able to produce things like this. But in this case, the memo is you can type whatever you want in it. It's up to you, fair game, whatever it is. Sometimes the book will tell you to do something specific. If you want to put it in there, if you don't necessarily have to, you're not obligated, but it does help you keep a good track record of your records. Okay. Any other questions? So once again, this one is going to be saved later to be print later, and I'll show you how to do that later on in the chapter when we want to print something. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click save and close. Okay, and I got that beep of approval. So once again, if I wanted to check where that is, it will show up on my checking account. So if I click this check register here, make sure I'm going into my checking account. And here it will populate right here saying, okay, well, you have a check that's pending of you writing this check out for $3,500, and now your bank account is down to $7,935. This is how accrual accounting work. I haven't paid Orlando Properties yet. I still have the check in my system. I haven't printed out, I haven't sent it out to them yet, but it's still updated my account as if I did pay already. Okay, so that's where this is how you keep a really good track record of your money, because every check that you write, you want to make sure that it's out of your system and not still lingering in your system or in your checking account. Okay, so there you go. Now, as I've mentioned before, right, if I really wanted to, how do I locate where that is? So for example, if you go to the vendors list, see, look, Bay Office Supplies, like I've mentioned, right? When I click on them, all you see is just Bay Office Supplies because I haven't put any information on there. But you get to see that you wrote a check out to them, check number 331 for those office supplies. So again, I didn't enter this in. It did it automatically in the background for you. And if you needed to look up a transaction, you can go to transactions and let's say I wanted to see like what did I do? So in this case, I have, let's see, checks that I wrote. There you go. It shows me right here how many checks I've written. Okay. So here, Orlando Properties, right? We just entered that in. Did we pay them yet? No, we still have our check in our register. And here's that one that we put in for Bay Office Supplies for that check 331. So here, as I enter in something in one place, it starts populating in every other place. All right, so that's the cool thing about QuickBooks. So you're able to locate those transactions pretty simple, pretty easy. Okay. All right, so that is using the write a checks function. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about using pay bills function. Okay, now for any reason that you have a relationship with a particular vendor and they let you buy things on an account and they either bill you or you pay them later anyway, then you're going to be using what's called a credit type of vendor where you choose to pay them later. Okay, so that's another way that you could pay your vendors, is you could have them do the service for you, bill you, and you pay them later. So here we're going to go ahead and do the very first one, which is going to be entering in a bill for the very first time. So in this case, that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to be entering in, we're going to be purchasing from Ace Supply, okay, and we're going to choose to pay for it later, okay? So let's go ahead and do that, or actually we could use the pay bills function first before we enter in a bill, okay? We will, let's see, yeah, let's check my records real quick to see if I even have a bill already made for me. I believe I have to enter it in. So let's see, Ace Supply. Do I have a bill from them? Okay, let's see, bill. Okay, so in this case, let's see, bill. I don't think I have it yet, so I have to go ahead and enter in the bill in the first place. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the enter bills. So how do we enter in a bill? Well, you have one right here. So let's say you bought something, you bought on an account, and they mailed you out a bill. This is where you need to enter it in because now you have a liability. You owe Ace Supply money now, right? And they will give you a time frame of when you need to pay it, just like any other kind of bill, right? Your credit card bills, your internet bills, right? They're always going to send you something and they're going to tell you what your due date is. So that's exactly what we're going to do, right? Right here gives you the enter bills option. So in order to pay a bill, you need to create the bill in the first place, okay? So if I go ahead and go to pay bills right now, right? I only see that I only have Wong and Sun, right? I don't see that I have any other bills left to pay because you need to create the bill in order for you to pay the bill. So you can't use the pay bill function unless you enter in a bill in the first place. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on enter a bill. So then therefore you can fill in the information as much as you need to enter in this bill. Now that is not the only way you can enter in a bill. There are about 6 different ways you can enter in a bill. This is just the first one. Okay, on the home page right here you have the enter bills icon. All right, second place you can go to is going up to your vendor's menu list, right? And you can click on that menu and then you'll be able to enter in a bill this way as well. Okay, so that's 2. The third way is going to be any way that you can get to the vendor center, okay, whether it's to the home page, menu bar, vendor's menu, or through the icon bar. Once you make it to that vendor center, okay, then here there are 3 ways you can enter in a bill, right? You could start right off the top where it says new transactions, right? And you got the first thing is to enter in a bill, okay? You could enter in a bill, right? You can say, for example, we're working on a supply, right? You can right click on a supply and be able to enter in a bill this way as well. You can also, while you're on the A Supplies portfolio, right, you can go ahead and go on the right side here, and you can click on Manage Transactions, and you can enter in a bill right here. It just says Bills. Okay, so that's 3 extra ways when you go into the vendor center on how you can enter in a bill. Okay, the last one is going to be utilizing the bill tracker. The bill tracker is one of the newer features that's been around since 2018 for QuickBooks. So a bill tracker allows you to be able to keep track of your bills, right? Hence the word bill tracker. So this allows you to keep track of your accounts payable. So every time you enter in a bill, it will populate right here, right? So that way you can get a really quick overview of all the bills that you owe instead of having to go to the vendor center and checking one person at a time. This one will give you an overall view of all of your bills that you have, and it will give you information such as when it's due, which ones are past due, which ones are overdue, okay, and which ones have been paid off. So this is a way much more cooler feature to use, especially when you're trying to keep track of your bills. Here is a best way to keep yourself organized is it will make this list for you, and it will give you when they're due right here. So you have due dates here. Okay, so you can keep track of which ones are coming up that you have to pay. All right. Down here, you also have that same manage transactions, and you're able to enter in a bill this way as well. So that's the 6th way you can enter in a bill. So first way is homepage. Second way is going to the vendor's menu. Third is any way that you go into the vendor center, right? You got the new transactions at the top of the window. You have a right click on the vendor and be able to enter the bill. You have the manage transactions on the vendor's profile. And then the last one is here on the bill tracker itself. You're able to enter in the bill here. So any way you can get to the bill tracker, whether it's on the icon bar, the menu bar, or on the vendor center itself, any way that you get to the bill tracker, you're able to enter in a bill. Okay, so yeah, so that was a lot of ways. But again, the more that you know, the better the better flexibility you are using this program. Okay, so I'm gonna go close all these windows so I can just do the very simple and easy one, which is straightforward. I'm gonna use the one on the home page. Okay, now here I'm gonna tell you this: when they ask you to navigate a QuickBooks question, right? They say, how do you enter in a bill? I mean, the first thing that you could say is the home page, and then you click on enter bills, right? That's the straightforward, easy answer right there. But that's not always going to be the answer, right? Your other answers could be going to the menu bar, going to the vendor center, going to the bill tracker, right? So make sure you do know those exact pathways to be able to enter them in, because you could be asked to enter in a bill, and the ways that they give you, right, you might have 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps even. If it has to be that long, you need to be able to tell me the pathway of how to be able to enter in a bill. Okay, so there you go. I enter in a bill. So the person I'm going to be entering in here is Ace Supply. So I type in ACE. There they are. Fills in my information automatically. Fills in the terms for me. Fills in the term date. So then it gives me the discount due date here, so then I know I'm aware. But in this case, I didn't even put in the date yet. So the date's going to be still the 8th of February. So therefore, if I get to take the discount in 10 days, that means I must pay by the 18th of February to get the discount. All right, what is my billing number? So in this case, this number should be on the bill that you receive. It's not going to be something that you create. It's going to be already on the invoicing billing statement. So you always, when you get a bill, it's always going to be at the very top corner. It will always say billing number. That's where you're going to put this number in. Okay. So again, do you need to put in the amount? You can always skip this part because you can always, it will take the amounts from here and put it up there for you. Okay. So let's see what is here. Now, when I typed in Ace Supplies, the first thing it says is that we're gonna be buying office supplies. In this case, no. We are actually making a purchase for our particular customer. So what we're gonna do here is that the book tells you that you're not gonna be using office supplies. You're gonna be using the cost of goods sold account. Okay? Because why? I'm going to be selling this item that I'm purchasing. Okay, so cost of goods sold. How much? $360. Okay, what is this purchase for? And then you can go ahead and see here that Mr. Jerry Perez told us or asked us to buy some photo paper for him. Okay, so that's what it says right here. We're going to be buying, we're going to be buying photo paper or photo materials for Jerry Perez. Okay, so photo materials, okay, for Jerry Perez. Okay, so this is where job costing is going to come to play because here we're buying a special order for a customer. We're not buying it for the store. We're buying it for a particular customer and we're going to bill him for that, right? Because it takes our efforts to have to contact our vendors to be able to buy the product for this particular person. So that's where the customer job section is where you're going to be typing in his name, Jerry Perez. So there he is. He exists in our books, Jerry Perez. Okay, and we're going to make it billable. And where is Jerry Perez? Which store location do we serve Jerry Perez at? Walnut Creek. Okay. And of course, see, I put in all this in for the memo here. I can simply just copy and be able to paste that in the memo right here. So this is what's going to be written on his, this will be written on his statement. And then this note right here is going to be what's on our books. Okay, so once again, I filled in $360. There it is, $360. We have everything that looks good. We got the discount due date, right, to be the 18th, and so on and so forth. So once everything looks good, we got the billing information, everything looks correct, we could go ahead and save and close. So now we got that beep of approval. So now, if I now go to my bill tracker, okay, now it tells me I have 2 bills now. And because of the date, they're both overdue. Okay? All right. All right, so that's the cool feature of this is that we get to see all of our bills lined up and we're able to manage our bills a little better here. Okay? So that's that there. Okay, so let's see what's next. Okay, so now that we enter in our bill, okay, what else can we do here? So let's go back to that bill real quick. So I can either go to my enter bills again and click this previous button, and this will pull up the last thing that I put in the actual enter bills transaction window. I can even locate this by going to my vendors. Once again, if I go to Ace Supply, right, I'm able to pull that information up. So here, boom, Ace Supply, bill number 2085, which was done on the 8th of February. If I double click on it, I can view it. Okay. If you forgot to add anything, such as maybe I forgot to add in Walnut Creek location, again, you're able to go in here and say, oh, what if he's from the San Jose location instead of the Walnut Creek? Then I can go ahead and come over here and fix it and save it, and it'll be fine. You can always add to a bill. Now you want to be careful on deleting, right? We'll talk about deleting in a few seconds when we dive into voiding checks. Okay? You can even attach the bill. So here it allows you to even attach the bill. So this is what you entered into QuickBooks, right? But you can scan a copy of the actual bill so you have it on file, and it's the digital copy that can be attached to this actual bill that you entered into QuickBooks. So that's what's a cool feature about that too, that you can attach documents to this particular bill. Okay, so then we got to see our bills. So then now the next thing that we got to do is actually pay our bills. Okay, so any questions in regards to entering a bill?
Yep.
Yes, you have a question, or no, you don't have a question? Or yes, you understood. All right. Okay. All right. So that is how we can view our bill. So we use the bill tracker to take a look at how many bills that we have. You can also run a report. What if the boss says, I want a report on all the bills that I haven't paid yet? You can't screenshot the bill tracker because the bill tracker is not a report. All it does is shows you what bills that you have, and it gives you the transactions for you to be able to either pay those bills off or so on and so forth. But let's say I want to print out a report for my boss, right? To see a list of everything that I owe that I haven't paid yet. How do I do that? Well, that's where you're going to go up to reports on the menu bar, okay? And as I click on menu, the reports menu, you're going to see a list of all of these reports that I can create. Now in this one, because in this specific chapter, we're looking at, expenses. We're looking at accounts payable. We're looking at our vendors, right? People that we owe or people that we buy from, right? So that means the category that I'm going to be looking at is going to be either vendors or payables. So when I click on that, right, it's going to give me an extended area that says, well, what are you looking for? Well, we're looking for unpaid bills details. So right here, I can go ahead and view my bills that I owe, right? And here it goes. It gives you a nice little report that says, here you have one from Ace Supply, a bill. It was dated on the 8th of February. This is how much you owe. Okay, and same thing with the Wong and Son. It says you have this amount due. Okay, you were billed from Wong and Son on January 11th, and this is how much you owe, $142. So this is a report that you can print out and you can give it to your boss. Okay, instead of using the bill tracker, because the bill tracker is not going to give you a report looking format. Okay, it just gives you an overview of what you do have. So you can't be going to your boss and say, hey, look at this, right? You would have to just print out the report like this. Okay, so we call this the unpaid bills report. Okay, so that gave me all the amount of money that I owe right now currently to people. Okay, so now after we figure that out, the next step is now we need to actually pay. So if you go ahead and look at this, so after you entered a bill, the next step after the bill, so if you follow this line through, you have to pay the bill. Straightforward, right? You received a bill, you owe money, you need to pay it. So this is where now, if I select on the pay bills, right? Now I have 2 bills that I must pay. Now, here's what's cool about this option here is you have a choice. You can choose to pay all of them. You can choose to pay none of them, right? So that's what's cool about this, and you could choose the dates that you want to pay them and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you all the ways that you're able to make a payment, right? In this case, there is 7 different ways you can make a bill payment, all right? The first 6 is going to be the same exact pathways as it is for you to enter in a bill, right? You have the home page. You can go up to the vendor's menu and be able to pay your bills, right? Pay bills, okay? You can even go to your vendor center, right? And for the exact same 3 ways, you'd be able to pay your bill, okay? Same thing if you go to your bill tracker, right? You can pay your bills here as well, right? Oh, that's not the wrong one. Bill tracker. Okay, so here's my bill tracker. Okay, I can either select them and right click them and say I want to pay them, or I can go down to the bottom of that window and click on manage transactions and bill or pay the bill, right? By either writing a check, or I can use a credit card charge for this one. This one, if you want to pay the bill, you would just do a check. Okay, so those are 6 ways that you can pay the actual bill. Now, if I want to actually, the 7th way, I have to view the bill. So if I double click on it, I view the bill. At the top of the window, there's the 7th way. You can choose to click pay bill right at the top of the window of the bills, entering the bills window. Okay, question?
Yeah. Can we use the interview?
Interview?
Interview.
Enter bills. Yes. So remember, right? So you're asking, can we use the enter bills function? No, you won't be able to. Okay, because you have to already have the bill existing. So here's the blank bill, right? Can you pay a bill here? It says you can, but what? I didn't even write my bill yet. Okay, so let's get a brand new spanking bill here. Okay, so it says, right, that you can pay a bill, but what bill would you be paying if you don't have anything in here? It is a way, because again, it's the same window. If you did have something, so again, if let's, for example, right, the A supply, if you have details in it, yes, you can be able to pay the bill here. But can you use the enter bills function to pay a bill? Why would you? You could go just straight to the bill payment. Why do you have to go through a window to get to another window? Make sense? So in this case, that is 7 ways that you can get to pay a bill. Okay, so let's go ahead and just go ahead and pay the bill. So here you have a few options on making bill payments here. Okay, like I mentioned here, you could either pay all the people that you owe, you could pay none of the people you want to owe, and so on and so forth. So let's say fast forward, it is now May 10, right? And you want to make a payment to the people, right? You can choose to filter your bills according by due date. So if you look at the very top of the window, right, you can choose either on the due date or before the due date. So you could do on the due date or before. So you could actually toggle a date that you want to select. So this is for in case you have like a million bills that you have to pay. You can filter them out this way by date. Okay, so maybe you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time. So you're saying, okay, what if I want to pay today for all today's bills? Which ones are due? You can filter them out that way. You could choose to see all of them. So that's what I have right now. I don't want to do by date because I only have 2 bills. I'm just going to have them displayed, all of them. You can even choose by by who you owe, right? So if you want to do by vendor, you could filter that by out too. Okay, and then of course sort by due date. Okay, yeah. So you can choose like that. Filter by, you could choose by vendor. So you could choose by, okay, what if I want to only pay Ace Supply? Then that's the bill that you have for Ace Supply. But in this case, I just want to view all of them because I'm just going to pay all of them. Okay? So how do I pay them? Well, that's simple. All you got to do is check mark which ones you're going to pay. So I'm going to pay Wong & Son and I'm going to pay Ace Supply. Now let's look at this very carefully because here's something that you have to also keep in mind. If there's a due date, right? You have a due date and then there's a discount due date. You need to be able to apply those discounts manually. It will not automatically calculate it for you. You have to apply the discount manually. So this is going to be extra work for you because you have to really look at your bills instead of just click out all of them and just paying them, right? Because I could have just paid them all. I would have paid Ace Supply the full amount. And then that means they're going to be sending me a check saying you overpaid. Okay? So this is something that you have to manually do yourself. So for instance, right? So Ace Supply, since I'm paying as of February 10, right? I get to take a discount, right? The terms that they gave me was that 2% discount. I don't know if you remember, right? But they allowed to give me a discount as long as I pay before the 18th. So how do I apply this discount? Well, that's where you're going to have to go down to the bottom, right? You can either view the bill. So for example, right, I'm going to view this Ace Supply bill so I know what I'm looking at, right? I can click on go to bill. So it's going to populate the bill for me saying this is the bill that you're trying to pay right now as of February 10. We have the discount due date. So here, this is the amount that I'm supposed to be discounting at, 2%. All right, now that I see it, I can close that window out. Okay, so now I have that reference point. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the right side. Okay, I have a terms right here where it says 2%. This is where I have to set the discount. So when I click set the discount, you're going to get this window here, and it's going to ask you a bunch of questions in regards to that discount. So in this case, they already calculate it for you. They already know that, that you're referring to this bill, Ace Supply, that for that 2% discount, they already calculated it for you for to be $7.20. Okay, so and what account is this going to fall under? Well, it's a discount, right? It's a purchase discount. So we're going to type in discount. And my options are either a sales discount or a purchase discount. Am I buying or am I selling? In this case, I bought photo paper for somebody else. So in this case, this is a purchase discount. Okay. Now, what class was this for? Since Jerry is the Walnut Creek location, that means this discount is going to be applied for the purchase that I made for Walnut Creek. Okay, and once I see this, my $7.20, you don't need to calculate this. It calculates it for you automatically. Then you can go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK and you set that default or set that discount, so you have to set it first. It will appear right here, but it won't take it off automatically. You have to manually set it up. Once you've done that and you have this $7.20, now let's take a look at your bill. Okay, you owed $360. You're taking the $7.20 discount, so therefore you only owe $352.80. So here it applies the discount. So again, I'm going to select that. I'm also going to pay Mr. Wong as well. He didn't give me any discount, so that's okay. But I did at least apply one of the discounts. So again, you can pay multiple bills at one time. You're not obligated to do one at a time. You could choose as many as you want to. You can, even if I wanted to say I only want to pay a supply, I don't have to check all of them. I only check the ones that I want to pay. Okay, so in this case, I select all of them because I'm going to pay all of them. So that's where you're going to go down to the bottom to finish the rest of the payment, right? So in this case, what date am I going to pay on? I'm paying on February 10, right? What kind of method am I going to be paying them? Am I going to pay with a check or a credit card? In this case, I only have two options. I'm going to pay them with a check. It's always proper to pay a check. Am I going to print the check now or am I going to assign the numbers? In this case, I'm just going to print the check numbers later. Okay? And making sure that this check is coming out from my checking account. Okay? And it gives you a little overview of how much money you have in your checking account as well. So before you send out the money and write the check out, it gives you a little overview so you don't accidentally write an NSF check, which stands for non-sufficient funds, okay? That you have enough money in the bank for you in order for you to write a check. So everything when it looks good, right? The total amount of discounts was $7.20, and the total amount that you're paying is going to be a grand total of $494.80. So combining the two together with the discount, okay? And once everything looks good, then I can go ahead and click pay scheduled bills. Okay, so I should get two beef approvals, one for the Wong and Son and the second one for the Ace Supply. Okay, all right, and that's how I use the pay bills function, right? By using the enter bills first, then making the payment afterwards. Okay, any questions here? Okay. So once I get there, I'll get this window saying, okay, well, this is how many checks that you wrote out. These are how many bills that you wrote out. What do you want to do next? Do you want to pay more bills or do you want to print the checks or you want to be done with the transaction? So in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to be done with this transaction. Okay. So again, any questions? Yes.
Okay, so this is just kind of to solidify it in my head. If you were doing your own company and it was a small one, you would probably, I don't know, you wouldn't batch it like you do with a big corporation. You might print the checks then. If you're working as a bookkeeper, like I'm going to do for several companies, I would batch it and print them later, is what I would mark.
Correct.
If I was doing my own, I'd mark done or whatever then.
Correct. Because like right now, I could still end up paying more bills, but for the next section, when we come back from the break, we're just gonna go ahead and print all the checks.
Okay.
Yes.
All
So
right,
yes,
thank
if you are a small business, you can do that as well. You could save up all your checks, so then when you're ready to print it, you could print them all simultaneously instead of printing one check at a time. Right? That's not very productive, right? That's counterproductive, right? Why would you spend all that time to just print one check at a time when you can save all the bills, enter them all in, pay them all off, and just save it at the very end of the day to just print them all out, put them in envelopes, and mail them out, right? It's much more productive, a lot more efficient if you were to save all your checks to the very end, print them all out at once, and assign the numbers on them, and then, mail them out at the end of the day, okay? Any other questions? Yes.
So my question is that we enter the bill for the rent of 3,200, and then but then when we try to pay the bill, that rent doesn't show up, but the balance on the check is reflected saying that the $3,200 has been taken out.
Correct.
That's where I'm a little confused.
But okay, so that one we didn't enter in a bill.
Okay.
Okay? So that one is where you're just thinking about, oh, I have to pay my rent, but I didn't receive a bill. maybe you were speaking to the landlord and they said, I want the money now. So maybe you're right there, you have your manual checkbook, or you'll be like, okay, how about I mail you the check out tomorrow? You go back to your office, you're writing the check out, and that's why you're using the write a check function, is that you're attempting to pay right then and there. You did not receive a bill, okay? So that's why it's not in the system, but because you are going to attempt to pay them right then and there, that's what I did when I used the wrote a checks window. But right now, I haven't printed the checks out yet.
Okay.
Okay? Because I'm saving to the very end. Because if you're going to print out a check, what's the most crucial thing that you must have in order for you to send the check out?
The money,
Not the money,
but the check itself.
not the check.
No.
You need a signature.
Oh.
How are you going to print out a check if you don't have a signature? You need someone to validate that transaction. So we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. But in this instance, we're waiting till the very end of the day to make sure everything looks good. All the checks are lined up. Okay, we're gonna print them all out, and we're gonna have someone sign, of course, or we can choose to have someone put a fake signature on there. Not a fake one, but a copy of a signature, and then we can mail those things out. So that is just the attempt right here, is that we're attempting to try to pay them right then and there. Okay, and we're using QuickBooks Write a Checks function to be able to pay these vendors. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so right now it is exactly 3:02. We kind of went a little over there, but let's go ahead and take our 15-minute break now.